So I found out I was pregnant on July 30th, 2012. I wrote it in my little journal, and all I wrote that day was I found out I was pregnant. And then I made this calendar. I'm like very big fan of making calendars. So I made this calendar, and I was trying to determine about how far along I was from that point in time. I basically, before that, I already knew I was pregnant. I hadn't got my period for 10 days because I knew that because of Period Tracker, which is an app, which is a nice app to have just to keep track of your period. And if you're trying to get pregnant, it's a good app to have because they have this calendar, and so it basically tells you when your period is expected. It tells, and then by plugging in each month your period, it knows like about how many days your period is and how, like, my period, my cycle is only 25-day cycle, which is a little bit shorter than the norm, and then my period's only 4 days. So basically, like, it plugs all that in, and then if it tells you which days you're most fertile, and then it tells you, like, supposedly when you're ovulating. I know that it's not going to be like 100% accurate, but it kind of gives you a nice idea of everything. Mine's actually on pregnancy mode now, so mine tells me how far along I am in the pregnancy and when my baby's due. But yeah, it's a nice app to have. So I knew already. A couple of my first symptoms were I had really sore boobs, but sometimes when you're trying to get pregnant, your body tricks you into thinking that you're pregnant. Like, it's just all mental because you know that these are the symptoms you're supposed to have. So then you're like, oh, I have this symptom, I could be pregnant. But I had really sore boobs. So some people get sore boobs before their period. I don't really ever, but I had really sore boobs. And I continued to have sore boobs till about 8 weeks. I probably was about 8 or 9 weeks when my boobs stopped being really sore. I walk a bridge every day about 5 miles. That's like my exercise. And during that exercise point in time, I was getting so extremely hot, where I was sweating, and I don't sweat. Like, my body just, I don't sweat. So I was like feeling like overly hot. So that was one of the other first signs. Like, in my mind, I thought, okay, maybe it's because I'm pregnant that this is happening. And that's before I took a pregnancy test. And then the other thing, I was really dehydrated, which I still am. That's one of the symptoms that I still have going on, is that I'm really dehydrated, so I drink a lot of water throughout the day. And then I was having to take naps at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I was just so tired. I was so tired, and I continued to be, after probably about 6 weeks, I was exhausted, where I slept so much. I slept like I was so tired. I couldn't even get up to go do my walk, and then if I wanted to do my walk, it was at a point in the day where it was so hot that I just couldn't do it. So I like stopped exercising, which kind of sucks, but I've started up again. And I continued to be completely exhausted until about 14 weeks. So 14 weeks is when you're done with the first trimester. So basically when you're out of the first trimester, a lot of these symptoms go away. Yeah, so those were like my first symptoms before I took my pregnancy test. And then finally I told my husband, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm pregnant, we should go get pregnancy tests. And he's like, okay. So we walked over to Walgreens, got pregnancy tests, and then I decided to wait till the next morning to take my pregnancy test because they say that, like, it's best to take it first thing in the morning because it has the most hormones in it, and so the pregnancy test can be detected more easily. So I took the test. I still have the test, which is kind of gross because why do I really need this? But basically, I did the first response test. I don't know if it's wanting to show up. But the, like, control line is really light, where that's the one that's there whether you're not pregnant or pregnant. And then the other line is like, was triply, like, as thick. So I was definitely, like, I was way pregnant. And it says, like, to wait a couple, I don't know how long it says to wait, but it basically popped up that I was pregnant right away. So I was really pregnant. So I took that. I took the test about 7 in the morning, and then I went back in bed and I told my husband, I'm pregnant. And he's like, really? Really? And yeah. So that was that. And then the first So I was pregnant, like I was excited about it. I think I probably went to Barnes & Noble that day and bought some kind of pregnancy book. And then I ended up calling 2 of my girlfriends the next day because my 2 girlfriends they're my best girlfriends. So, and each of them have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. They both have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. So, they were probably the best people I could call because they've had babies in most recent time. And so I wanted to ask them about, like, you know, doctors and whatnot, and what happens during appointments, and blah, 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 so I know whether or not I need to bring my husband, because I really didn't want my husband to have to come to, I know there's, like, a lot of appointments during pregnancy, and I didn't want to have to make my husband come to the ones where, like, you just get weighed, you pee, and they talk about, like, the blood work you're going to be getting. Like, I don't feel like he needs to come to those kind of appointments. So that was that. And then I scheduled an appointment at an OBGYN because my gynecologist is only a gynecologist. She doesn't deliver babies. So I scheduled an appointment, and when you call for your appointment, they ask you, like, when was your last period? How long did it last? And then they tell you on the phone how far along you are. So at that point in time, I determined that I was 5 weeks, 3 days pregnant, which is pretty cool. So that is when I knew exactly when I think I waited just a couple days to call the OBGYN. And then they scheduled my first appointment for, I think it was like 2 weeks later. So I was like a little over 7 weeks pregnant. So I went in for my first appointment, and when I went for my first appointment, you fill out a bunch of paperwork, and they basically ask about your health, and all that jazz on the paperwork. And then you go in, first thing you do, you pee in a cup, and then they do a little pregnancy test there, and they're like, you're pregnant, do you want to keep this? And I'm like, I already have one at home, I'm good, I don't need any more of those. But I guess, like, a lot of people decide they want the little, like, pregnancy test they do there. Then they weigh you, and then you go into a doctor, like a little room, and then I got asked a bunch of questions about, like, my health, my husband's health, like, all kinds of questions. Luckily for us, we have, like, really healthy families. Yeah, so we have pretty healthy families. So that was easy to answer than all those questions and whatnot. And then they take my blood pressure. That's what they did. And then the doctor comes in, and typically he would give me a pap smear, but I had my last pap smear, I think, in February. So, they didn't feel a need to do another pap smear, especially since I didn't have any kind of abnormalities on my pap smear. And then they did swab the inside of my vajayjay for cultures, I think, to test for different STDs and whatnot, which all came back good. And then, or like I didn't have any. And then that was basically it. And then the doctor said, okay, I want to see you back in this amount of weeks. And then I would go back for my next appointment, which is an ultrasound, which I would then take my husband to that because that seems important. That was my 10-week appointment with them, was a 10-week ultrasound. In between that time, however, which kind of sucks, I downloaded an app, which is a cool app to have. It's called Baby Center, which is nice because it's Baby Center My Pregnancy, and this is a nice app to have because it tells you, like, how far along you are. It tells you how many days you have left to go. It tells you your baby's development, anything that you could probably get in a book at the bookstore. It tells you all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know, it's a pretty cool app to have. However, I suggest there's a little part of it called there's a little section called Birth Club, where there are these message boards that people write on, and they write on the message boards and they talk about, like, what's going on in their pregnancy. I strongly suggest staying off of those, especially until you are done with your first trimester, because it can really freak you out. And this freaked me out so much. It completely freaked me out because they talk about things that are really scary that I don't think happen to a majority of people. I think that, like, I don't know, it makes you worry more than anything. So I was completely freaked out until my next doctor's appointment, because I would go on these birth boards, and they're good, I guess, for, like, if you want support from other people, or if you want to talk to other people about your pregnancy, but I strongly suggest staying off of them because they will freak you out. So I did that, which was a big mistake. In between that period of time before my next ultrasound, I never got, like, morning sickness, like what you think of as morning sickness, where you, like, physically throw up. I have a really hard time throwing up in general. Like, I couldn't even make myself throw up if I wanted to. So I never actually threw up. I actually felt, like, really nauseous whenever I'd get hungry. Like, anytime I ever got hungry, I would get nauseous, and then I'd, like, eat something and I'd feel better. I did it a couple times, like, feel like vomit in my mouth a little bit, but it never actually, like, came out. So, yeah, I didn't really get that morning sickness. But like, when I say tired, like, it's an extreme exhaustion that I got, and that didn't go away until 14 weeks, where you are so tired that, like, all you want to do is sleep. It's, like, almost like having, like, the worst hangover ever. It's, like, it's not fun, and it's upsetting because you're like, I want to do things, but I can't because, like, my energy, like, this baby is just draining all of my energy. So, yeah. And then sometimes you get this thing, like, you get forgetful, like, very forgetful. I would get forgetful about just random weird things. You get period, like, cramps, but not, like, very intense cramps. It's just, like, I think, like, your uterus stretching and whatnot. That kind of freaked me out a couple times, because you're like, oh no, I'm gonna get my period. But they're not very strong, and they only last for, like, a couple minutes, maybe an hour. Yeah.